Hello everyone and welcome to my channel, A Jane Eyed Sews. I'm Carrie and I'm excited to show you all the costumes from Jane Austen adaptations I had the privilege to see in person with historical costuming friends at the Fashion and Sensibility exhibit hosted by the Taft Museum of Art in Cincinnati, Ohio. It was delightful to see such familiar costumes in person from a few of my favorite Jane Austen adaptations, including the BBC's 1995 Pride and Prejudice miniseries directed by Simon Langton, with Dinah Collin as the costume designer. Lizzie Bennet's red or pink gown, made of sheer cotton muslin with a delicate print, was worn by the actress Jennifer Ehle in multiple scenes, which is one of the things I love about the 1995 version, re-wearing of dresses. The bodice is buttoned at the back, and this is one of the gowns we could see from all sides. I was heartened to notice the slightly uneven hemline, which sometimes happens in my own gowns. And of course, the shirt Colin Firth was wearing as Mr. Darcy, taking a quick dip in his pond at Pemberley. It's dry now, but I know many Austen fans salivate over that scene, even if it is not in the novel. Here is Mrs. Hurst's orange or burnt umber ball gown, complete with her turban headdress. I loved that I could walk around most of the gown and see it from multiple angles. The gorgeous silk has a subtle stripe pattern I did not notice in the miniseries. And then Mrs. Bennet's ball gown, all lace and frills to go with her frivolous character. But I do have compassion for her poor nerves. Lydia Bennet, played by Julia Sawalha in the 1995 miniseries, wore several cute outfits to go with her vivacious personality, including this lovely wool cloak and Indian cotton muslin gown with a patterned Spencer jacket and cap. Her sisters also wore a lot of light-colored cotton, including these gowns worn by Polly Maberly as Kitty and Lucy Briars as Mary. Kitty's yellow print dress solved a mystery for me as a frequent viewer of the series. Many of the gowns do not appear to have a back or front closing on film, but this one reveals an opening at the underbust closed with hooks and eyes. Mary's jumper-style dress looks comfy. It clearly closes at the front with those ties, and the check gingham pattern was in use in the early 19th century. Mr. Bennet often wears long, loose coats while at home because he likes to be comfortable. Is this a banyan, or does it have too much shaping? His wife frequently wears fluffy caps, which I adore and wish would come back into fashion, along with light-colored printed gowns like this one. I think this is one of the ball gowns worn by Jennifer Ehle as Lizzie Bennet, which means there were no costumes on display worn by her sister Jane in the series. Weird. But the Taft had costumes displayed in many rooms outside the main gallery, so I kept looking. Here's Lizzie and Mr. Darcy's outfits from the final proposal scene. I wanted to see the buttons on the little Spencer jacket and get a close-up picture, but they were covered by the ribbon. I love the daywear in the miniseries, but the bright silk ball gowns worn by Bingley's sisters are quite exciting, likely to exhibit their relative wealth. Here is Mrs. Hurst's peachy orange ball gown with lace details on the bodice. I would totally wear this dress. And oh my god, her sister Caroline's green ball gown, which I think is my favorite because of the bright olive green color, and I can 100% see myself wearing this dress even if I would never be as snarky as Caroline Bingley. There were only 2 costumes from the 2005 version of Pride and Prejudice that I could find, but one was this gorgeous gown worn by Judi Dench, who played Lady Catherine de Bourgh. It was very old-fashioned for a Regency setting. Perhaps the old-fashioned style denoted her old money. Older generations would have been slower to adopt new styles, but decades late, they did have Mr. Darcy's loose coat, shirt, and trousers from the I'm in love with you scene towards the end that did not happen in the book. Here I am complaining about how mopey Mr. Darcy seemed in the 2005 version. But it's time to move on to another of my favorite Austen adaptations, the 1995 film Sense Sensibility, directed by Ehle, with Jenny Beavan and John Bright as designers. Kate Winslet plays Marianne Dashwood. I love this pelisse with corduroy velvet-looking lapels and cuffs, although it looks greener in the film. Her dress, which she wears in multiple scenes, appears more purple in the film and burgundy at the Taft. Eleanor's muslin gown with gathering at the front and horizontal striped open robe with 3/4 sleeves that have cuffs looks very 1790s to me and supremely comfortable. I love the button closures at the front, but I think it actually closes with hooks and eyes. This sad ensemble includes a muslin gown, a sleeveless cotton Spencer jacket, a wool pelerine, a silk petticoat, and a neck fichu according to the museum sign. The costume makers for the film constructed several copies of this particular outfit to go through multiple takes of the scene in which Marianne gets drenched in the rain before becoming deathly ill. Maybe this particular one did not get wet. I love this open robe in pinks and reds, and I really love Mrs. Jennings. She teases too much, but otherwise, she is living her best happy life as a rich widow who is not afraid to wear elaborate fashions harkening back to the Renaissance. Here, lace details at the neckline and along the sleeves contrast beautifully with the shot silk taffeta, like a chemise poking through slashes in 16th century sleeves. I really don't like Fanny Dashwood and her persistent selfishness, but this red and green gown made from an Indian sari is fascinating, especially with the delicate apron and lace details in her cap and bodice. We only briefly see this gorgeous lavender silk gown or pelisse in the wedding scene at the end of the movie, and I did not appreciate its elegance and intricate details until seeing it in person. The turban headdress is fabulous, the ribbon bodice trim is opulent, the embroidery in nicely contrasting colors takes my breath away. The shot silk taffeta petticoat is perfect, and I'm fascinated by the black leaf-like lace at the neckline. I mean, really, I applaud whoever made this fantastic ensemble, and I want to make one myself. One of Mrs. Dashwood's morning gowns was all by itself in the dining room at the Taft, which seemed kind of lonely, particularly given the character's sorrow at the beginning of the film upon losing her husband. But look at those sleeves! I have no idea who wore this costume or in which adaptation because I find menswear to be much less memorable in this era, but I think that is partly because it is on a mannequin. My friend, however, looks dashing in his outfit. We looked at many other splendid works of art in the Taft, including this painting featuring a grumpy-looking kitty cat. The exhibit did include some costumes from the 2007 film version of Mansfield Park, starring Billy Porter, Hayley Atwell, and Blake Ridson. It's not among my favorites, in part because the costumes seem more 1790s or even earlier, when the novel was written more than a decade into the 19th century, but I adore this red wool redingote Hayley Atwell wears as Miss Crawford, and I think it suits her active, lively character. Costumes from adaptations of Austen's novel Emma were on display too, like this gorgeous maroon velvet jacket, cotton dress, and chemisette worn by Kate Beckinsale in one of two 1996 movie versions of the book. Look at the tucks! Then we have Emma's silk wedding gown with a delicate embroidered net train from the other 1996 version starring Gwyneth Paltrow and Jeremy Northam. This wedding scene was actually in Austen's original, but the culminating and joyous marriage scenes in my two favorite adaptations in this exhibit, both from 1995, were not in the novels. That's okay because adding these scenes gave the costume designers the chance to revel in Regency wedding fashion. Eleanor's wedding outfit befits her future as the wife of a clergyman on a modest income. I love her velvet spencer and printed gown, and it illustrates the fact that many women got married in their Sunday best rather than an elaborate gown made only for a wedding, like many brides today. Marianne's gown is intricately elaborate, showcasing the relative wealth of her groom, Colonel Brandon. The costume includes a petticoat overlain by a sheer gauze underskirt with gold dots, a mesh overdress with a marvelous train and long sleeves, embroidered with straw, and inspired by a dress in the Hermitage Museum in St. Petersburg, Russia. The crown-like headdress is supported by wire. I really wanted to feel the straw and the sheer fabric, but of course I refrained. I did not want to get banned from the Taft. The soon-to-be Mrs. Darcy's wedding dress is silky simplicity in comparison, but the front closure of the bodice and subtly striped fabric are gorgeous. I think the elegance and simplicity of many of her gowns throughout the series signify her good understanding and taste, as Austen might have put it, and her civility, especially in contrast to the snarky Miss Bingley and her more conspicuous consumption. But oh, I love that green silk dress of Caroline's. Which is your favorite of the gowns you've seen? I hope you enjoyed this up-close exploration of Jane Austen costumes from some classic adaptations. Please like and subscribe if you want to see more videos like this one. What other Austen adaptation or Austen-related costumes would you like to see on exhibit? I'd love to be in the actual presence of costumes from Autumn de Wilde's 2020 version of Emma, and I would not say no to visiting Austenland, Northanger Abbey, Persuasion, or even Bridgerton costumes. I learned so much every time I can see costumes or historical garments in person. Thank you for watching. Bye!